All right. Shalom, everyone. Shalom. And of course, shalom to the 12 tribes scattered worldwide. Scattered but not forgotten, certainly not forgotten by Yah. And a big shalom to the Gentiles who have chosen to throw in their lot with the children of Israel. We welcome you. Welcome to the family. Tonight, I want to talk about us returning to our intended purpose as a people. And I want to start off by sharing actually a fictional story, but it's one that I read in my childhood. So when I was young, I spent a lot of time reading a genre that is now called heroic fantasy, about great heroes that would rise up and do great things. Nothing compared to the Bible, but one of those stories was called Midnight Falcon. It was written by a man named David Gemmell. And Midnight Falcon was about a man from a barbarian tribe who fled his homeland and went to a society much akin to Rome. In this place, he trained to become a gladiator. He trained under a gladiator who was given a very ironic name, a gladiator by the name of Rage. This gladiator was very disciplined, very steady, had excellent technique in the arena. The interesting thing about this gladiator, Rage, was he was so good that people stopped taking bets on whether or not he would win his duels, but rather they started beating a drum to determine how long it would take him to defeat the man. And they took bets on that. So boom, 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 every time he stepped into the arena. Usually by the 7th or 8th drum beat, Rage would defeat his opponent. Okay, so it's about this heroic gladiator named Rage. Now, Rage began to get old. And as someone who is getting a little bit older, you're not as strong as you used to be when you were 25 as opposed to 35, which I am. Rage was approaching middle age. He was still very disciplined and trained very hard, and of course he trained gladiators under him. But he was actually challenged to a duel by an up-and-coming young gladiator who was becoming a legend in his own right. So these two began to duel. And during that duel, Rage began to flag. He was older. He was beginning to slip. More and more cuts started to show up on his body. He started to lose hope. He forgot who he was. And then out of the crowd, a sound was heard. Boom, 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 a drum beat. Rage was reminded of his youth, and he stood up tall because he remembered who he was. And the young man who was facing him began to lose hope because he realized, I can't beat him. He knows who he is again. My purpose in sharing that little story was to connect it to us. See, in these last days, Yah is putting out a drum beat that his people can hear. It's the drum beat of Deuteronomy 28. It's the drum beat of Leviticus 26.
Yeah, man.
The blessings and the curses that mark us as the children of the covenant. And we are hearing that drum beat from Yah, and we are remembering who we are. It's important that we remember our identity, but what comes part and parcel to that is remembering our purpose. It's great that we are the children of Israel, but we have a job to do in these last days. And that job is to be the light of the world. So we're going to spend this time exploring the scriptures and rediscovering our original intended purpose and walking in it. So let's go ahead and turn to Deuteronomy chapter 4. We're going to start reading at verse 5. Okay, this is the statement of our original purpose directly from the mouth of Yahuwah. All right, so I'll go ahead and get started reading. Deuteronomy chapter 4, starting at verse 5. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as Yahuwah, my Elohim, commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye go to possess it. Keep, therefore, and do them. For this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great who hath Elohim so nigh unto them as Yahuwah our Elohim is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great that hath statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law which I set before you this day? Our original purpose as a people was to model the Torah and to walk in the blessings of the covenant so that all of the nations would see us and seek to be like us. Has anyone ever wondered why everybody tends to copy us?
In the world.
In the world. We put braids in our hair. Now you see blonde women putting braids in theirs. We start doing hip hop, wearing baggy clothes. Now you have kids in Korea doing hip hop and wearing baggy clothes. Why is it that they always emulate us?
We cool like that.
We are cool like that.
Who we are.
Okay? But it's who we are. We are the chosen people, and it's a spiritual thing. They were always intended to emulate us, but they were supposed to follow us in righteousness. This is why we've been punished so severely. Okay? We set culture. It's what we do. It's who we are. Okay? So that was our original purpose. Let's go to Exodus, and let's go to Exodus 19. Verses 5 and 6. We're going to be jumping all over the Bible tonight. You know how I like to do. Exodus chapter 19, and we're going to read verses 5 and 6. Actually, we'll pick it up at verse 4. Okay? So Exodus chapter 19, starting at verse 4. Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and an holy nation. This is our purpose. This is our purpose among the nations. So here's the picture. 12 tribes, right? How many tribes was set apart to be the priesthood? How many tribes were? The Levites, right?
Right.
Now, among the nations, Yah has a nation of priests. It's you. We're a kingdom of priests. And that mandate has never changed. It never changed. And we're going to confirm that through the words of the Messiah. Okay? This is our original purpose, to be a kingdom of priests and to model Torah for the world. So let's go to Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to pick it up at verse 13. Remember, the Messiah said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Yisrael, right?
Right.
Not because salvation is not for everyone. Yah just said that all the earth is mine. He came to us because he was preparing his priesthood to minister to the whole world. That's who he was sent to. The high priest preparing his priests. Make sense? Okay.
Good point.
All right, so Matthew chapter 5, starting at verse 13. And we're going to read these verses slowly. Ye are the salt of the earth. But if the salt have lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under foot of men. He called us the salt of the earth. That phrase is deeply rooted in Hebraic thought. And we're going to go back to the Torah. Told you we'd be jumping around a lot, so keep a finger here. We're going to go back to the Torah in order to unpack that. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 2, verse 13. We need to gain an understanding of the significance of salt. Why did he call us the salt of the earth? It's deep Hebraic thought right there, and we're going to break this down. Okay. Now you're going to see the word meat used here, but in this context, it actually refers to a grain offering. You can read the entire chapter for context, but this is actually talking about grain offerings. Leviticus chapter 2 and verse 13. And every oblation of thy meat offering shalt thou season with salt. Neither shalt thou suffer the salt of the covenant of thy Elohim to be lacking from thy meat offering. With all thine offerings thou shalt offer salt. So an offering of this type was not even considered acceptable if it lacked salt. Salt is also the sign of the covenant. I've had the opportunity to do a little bit of studying on Eastern covenants, and salt is like a big deal. Even among the Arabs, there's a saying, there is salt between us. There's a covenant between us. There's an agreement. Salt is a sign of the covenant. Now, if you look into the Hebrew word for salt, you're actually going to get a very interesting word picture. The Hebrew word for salt is melach. Melach. And that's mem, lamet, het. Melach. You get an interesting word picture. So mem means what? Water, chaos, right? There's also secondary meanings to mem. Might and blood. Okay? Blood. So now you have lamet, that's staff, gold, toward, right? Control. A shepherd uses a staff to give instruction to his sheep, right? That's the purpose. Hey, get out of there. And then you have chet, tent wall, fence, separation. So let's put the word picture together. You have a blood covenant, instructions, and people that are set apart. Blood, instructions, people that are set apart. Salt. So in the word for salt, you have an actual representation of the covenant itself. Water is also symbolic of what? Baptism. Baptism. When our ancestors crossed over the Red Sea, that was a baptism. You have to be baptized in the name of Yahushua and Yah and the Ruach HaKodesh, right? That's a necessary part of salvation. Be baptized for the remission of sin. So salt is the very picture of the covenant. So when he says that you are the salt of the earth, You're the representation of the covenant here on earth. Salt does a few things. It preserves. It gives taste. It gives flavor. Of course, our people, we just mentioned the whole culture thing. We always add a splash of color, a splash of flavor to anything we do. But that's nothing new. Our purpose, however, is to be a sign of the covenant. So if an offering is made acceptable by salt, and he said, you are the salt of the earth, is he saying that your presence in keeping the Torah is making the earth acceptable to Yah? What is this idea behind you being the salt of the earth if salt makes an offering acceptable to Yah, according to Leviticus 2 and 13? That's the Hebraic thought that we have to consider when we look at what the Messiah is saying. Our presence on earth serves a purpose. We're the sign of the covenant. We're supposed to be walking in the Torah in being that light of the world, right? So let's go back to Matthew chapter 5 and picking up at verse 13. And let's keep in mind that salt that has lost its savor is useless, right? Because it serves no purpose. So if you're not keeping Torah, if you're not being the salt of the earth and the light of the world, you're going to be thrown out. You'll be cast off. You're useless because you are dysfunctional. So it's wonderful that everyone knows that they're Israel, great. But if you're out there cussing on street corners and saying that salvation is only based on your bloodline, you're not functioning within your intended purpose. You're steering people away from Yah instead of drawing them toward Yah, which is our purpose. Okay, so Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to pick up where we left off. So Matthew 5 and 14. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So the Messiah is calling his people who are walking in Torah and following after him, he is calling them the light of the world. That is extremely significant. So let's go to John chapter 1 and unpack this idea of who the light is. Why is it significant that the Messiah calls his followers the light of the world? John chapter 1, because I love the classics. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim.
Right there.
The same was in the beginning with Elohim. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from Elohim whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, capital L, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, capital L, but was sent to bear witness of that light, capital L. That was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, To them gave he power to become the sons of Elohim, even to them that believe on his name. So the true light, of course, is Yahushua.
Correct.
But he called you the light of the world in his Sermon on the Mount. He called you the light of the world. So the true light called you the light of the world. It's kind of a mystery. Not to Shawa. Shawa's not surprised.
Correct.
Because we have a purpose. Okay? According to 1 Corinthians 12 and 27, we are the body of Hamashiach. We are the body of Hamashiach. So it's no surprise that he will call us the light of the world, because if we are in him and he is the light, then we too are the light. Because we represent his presence. We represent him on earth. We're his servants. That's our purpose. That is our purpose. Okay? I'm getting like a power warning. Hopefully we'll be all right.
On your phone?
Yeah. Anyway.
Switching to the other.
So we are the light of the world. The Messiah goes on to say that you don't light a candle and put it under a bushel. You set it on high so that it can give light. And he compares us to a city on the hill that can't be hid. So in other words, we are never supposed to blend in. We're supposed to stick out. We're supposed to be a peculiar people. Who are these people wearing zeets at work? Who are these people who are always reading the Bible in their spare time and are always talking about some guy named Yah? Who are they? It's okay to stick out. I work as a substitute teacher, and I wear my zeets with my substitute teacher attire. And at least once a week, I get one student that says, "What are those blue and white things?" And I say, "Oh, well, this means that I believe in keeping the Torah, the laws of God in the Bible." I explain things in a way they can understand. But we're not supposed to stick out. Every opportunity is an opportunity to witness. Every time we meet someone, it's an opportunity to witness. It's an opportunity to stand out. And we're supposed to be ready to witness at any time, because that's our purpose. Our purpose isn't to blend in. We're not supposed to look like the people in the world, move like them, think like them, talk like them, dress like them. Get over it. It's all right to stick out. We're supposed to. Okay. So what people are supposed to see in our lives and in the way that we carry ourselves, they're supposed to see the Torah in action. And that's really important, because we're supposed to be that living example. You know, though, that old saying, to some people, you are the only Bible they will ever read.
Yeah, we've heard that.
Right? Because the word is supposed to be in your heart and manifested in your actions. So people who don't believe are looking at believers. And if they see something different from the world, those who are called will be drawn to you. And that's your purpose in these last days. That's our purpose. And we have to really think about that, meditate on it, and walk in that purpose. We're not supposed to be hiding ourselves. We're supposed to be a part of this. It's a spiritual war. The weapons of our war, of course, are not carnal. They're spiritual. Fruits of the Spirit. We'll get into that in just a second. I won't run long. So, according to John, the light shined in the darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. So you ever notice how people in the world don't understand you anymore? They think you done changed. Conan Yahoo, they think you became a Muslim.
Forgot about that.
You know, I think that one thing we need to really consider is that our job is not to save everyone.
Right.
That's not your job. You can't. So let's go to Matthew chapter 7, and we're going to read verses 13 and 14. Got you guys jumping all around. I hope you'll be patient with me.
Go ahead now.
It's that whole precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little, right? The darkness, people in darkness, they will not always understand you, and that's okay, because the Messiah prophesied of these things. Matthew 7 and 13. Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many, that says many, right? Many there be which go in thereat, because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. That's what the Messiah said. So are we here to be a witness to everyone, to save everyone? No. We're going to share the gospel with everyone, because this gospel, the one based in Torah, must be preached to all nations as a witness, and then the end shall come. Those are the words of our Messiah. But we're not going to reach everyone. You're not going to reach every heart. And you need to make peace with that now, as we are focused on returning to our purpose. Our purpose is to find the lost sheep, the ones that are called by Yah, that he's sending us to, or whom he sends to us for their care. It's not everyone. It's only a few that are going to make it, and we have to accept that, okay? Now, the interesting thing about these lost sheep is that they're going to come from all nations, tribes, and peoples, and tongues. This whole idea that salvation is only for Israel, I don't understand where people are getting at, but it's not coming from the scriptures.
Man, let's look at the script.
He just said that all the earth was his. Everyone belongs to Yah. If you're listening to this message, you belong to Yah whether you want to or not. Because he made you. He made all of us. Regardless of your skin color, regardless of your language, regardless of whatever nation you hail from. And we're going to go into the scriptures to prove that just a little bit, because this is our purpose. First, I want to go to the Great Commission. Let's go to Matthew 28 and 9. This is the command that our ancestors were given directly by the Messiah,
King.
our King.
Yes, sir.
The Great Commission, this is called. Matthew 28 and 19. Go ye therefore and teach all nations. Quick point there. That word in the Greek translated to nations, in Greek it is ethnos, from which we derive words like ethnicity. It literally means races. So get it out your head that we're only supposed to teach Israel. We are commissioned by our master to teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you.
Torah. Amen.
What is that, More? That's what?
That's Torah.
That's Torah. Because the Messiah didn't come teaching anything new. All he did was re-emphasize the same old Torah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
And lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Friendly reminder, we're not alone in this thing. The Messiah is with us. Wherever two or more are gathered in his name, there he is in the midst. We're not alone. And that's something that we all have to keep in mind. I know that there are many people out there who are viewing who don't have a congregation. They're not alone, though. We're all one family, and we're all on the same mission. So this is the Great Commission. He said, teach everybody. Everybody. Okay? So let's go to Amos. The prophet Amos. We're picking it up at chapter 9. I lose Amos all the time. I may have to run to my table of contents real quick. I am not proud. Don't be proud. It's not a good look. So this whole idea that salvation, that the good news is for all nations, the Messiah didn't make that up either. The prophets said it and reiterated it over and over and over again. So I just want to bring a few things out. Amos chapter 9, and we're picking it up at verse 11. In that day, I will raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof. And I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old, that they may possess the remnant of Edom and of all the heathen which are called by my name, saith Yahuwah that doeth this. So he said that he has a remnant of Edom who are hated enemy, those Edomites, and of the heathen that are called by his name.
Oh my goodness.
Quick check. Who are the people who are called by his name? Is it Israel?
No, it's the boy.
Oh, it's the Goy. So in other words, this implies that the Gentiles and Israel will both be called by his name. There will be one people. One people. That's a little hard for people to swallow. But it's cool because we got Ezekiel. He'll help it go, the concept go down a little smoother. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 47. We'll pick it up at verse 21. Now, just as a little bit of quick context here, this is Ezekiel's vision of the Messiah's millennial reign in the Holy Land. Ezekiel is actually just finishing up a vivid description of the borders of Israel, of the new Israel, the restored Israel. And we'll read these last few verses of the chapter again, beginning at verse 21. So we are in Ezekiel chapter 47, picking it up at verse 21. So shall ye divide this land unto you according to the tribes of Yisrael. And it shall come to pass that ye shall divide it by lot for an inheritance unto you, and to the strangers that sojourn among you, which shall beget children among you, and they shall be unto you as born in the country among the children of Yisrael, and they shall have inheritance with you among the tribes of Yisrael. And it shall come to pass that in what tribe the stranger sojourneth, there shall ye give him his inheritance, saith Yahuwah Elohim. Did I make it up? Did we just read it? So not only are these Gentiles coming with us into the Holy Land, they're going to get part of the Holy Land as an inheritance, just like us. Just like us. The Messiah didn't come with any new doctrine. He came with the same old Torah. Never gets old. Okay. So just because I like to get on everyone's nerves, I'm going to ask you to go to John 10. John 10 and verse 16. Okay. John chapter 10. And we're going to actually pick it up at verse 15. Okay. Gospel of John chapter 10, starting at verse 15. As the Father knoweth me, even so know I the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. Them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice. And there shall be how many folds? One fold. And how many shepherds? One people. One people. There's no getting around it. And of course, according to Isaiah chapter 56, verses 6 and 7, he said that his house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. All nations, all people. In the book of Revelation 7 and 9, you see among the redeemed those of all nations, tribes, and peoples and tongues, saying salvation belongs to the Lamb. It's all over the Bible. So I have a quick word of warning to my brothers out there on the street corners, cussing people out, saying that if you're not an Israelite, you're condemned to the lake of fire, blah, 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 blah. You're off. You're off. And I say this not out of spite, but out of love. Please stop. Because a horrible judgment has been prophesied against you by the Messiah himself. Let's go to Matthew chapter 18. We're going to read verses 1 through 6. I'm going to show you the judgment that is prophesied against you by the Messiah himself. So pay attention, especially if you're out there on the street corners thinking that you're doing something for the kingdom. Whose kingdom? Matthew chapter 18, picking it up at verse 1. At the same time came the disciples unto Yeshua, saying, Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And Yeshua called a little child unto him and set him in the midst of them. And he said, Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoso shall receive one such little child in my name receiveth me. But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he be drowned in the depth of the sea. So a lot of these Gentiles that you guys are cussing out and offending, they're babes in Christ. They have very little knowledge of Torah, and you're turning them away. Think about what you're doing. Think about the long-term implications of your actions, especially if you're out there claiming to represent Yah and you're offending people that are babes in HaMashiach. That's the judgment that's prophesied against you, and it came directly from the Messiah's lips, not mine, so take it up with him, not me. I'm not qualified to judge anybody. Well, not the way he will. Now that I've rebuked my brethren, I do want to take a moment and offer a word of warning and rebuke to the Gentiles who, for whatever crazy reason, think that they have replaced us. We're still talking about our original purpose, and we're going to get right back to that. But we also have to understand where everyone stands in this. The Gentile church has never replaced Israel, and we're just going to go into a few verses that prove that. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 31. And we'll read verses 35 through 37. The seed of Israel, we remain the priests and chosen nation of Yah. We have never been replaced. We've been scattered, but never forgotten. He's raising us up right now. We'll let Jeremiah break it down. Jeremiah chapter 31, picking it up at verse 35. Thus saith Yahuwah, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea when the waves thereof roar. Yahuwah of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart from before me, saith Yahuwah, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus saith Yahuwah, if heaven above can be measured, if heaven above can be measured, and the fountains of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Yisrael for all they have done, saith Yahuwah. So until you can do that, we remain a nation before him. We've never been replaced. I don't understand where you guys got it. Moreover, our beloved brother Shaul warns you in Romans chapter 11 not to boast against the branches. Let's go there. I can't help it. Romans chapter 11, we'll pick it up at verse 11. It baffles me how members of the Gentile church can read this and somehow come away with the idea that they've replaced Israel when they were expressly warned that they did not, and they shouldn't think in those terms. We'll pick it up at verse 11. Romans 11, starting at verse 11. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Elohim forbid.
There it is.
But rather through their fall, salvation is come unto the Gentiles, for to provoke them, being Israel, to jealousy. Now, if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine own office. If by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are of my flesh, and might save some of them, for if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches. Pay attention here, Gentile church. And if some of the branches be broken off, and thou, being a wild olive tree, wert grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches. But if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. Thou wilt then say, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in, that you done replaced Israel. Whenever you say that, this is what you're doing. You're boasting against the natural branches. Check your spirit. For if Elohim spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not thee.
Yeah, man.
Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of Elohim. On them which fell, severity. But toward thee, goodness, if thou continue in his goodness. Otherwise, thou also shalt be cut off. Don't boast against the natural branches. Don't talk about how you're the new Israel and you've replaced Israel and the true seed don't matter and color don't matter and these curses don't matter. stow it. If it doesn't line up with the book, drop it. It's easy.
Just drop it.
Just drop it. We're here to show you the way. And I'm going to take you guys back to Jeremiah to prove that we're here to show them the way.
All right.
Jeremiah chapter 12. We're going to pick it up at verse 14. Jeremiah chapter 12, and we're picking it up at verse 14. Thus saith Yahuwah against all mine evil neighbors that touch the inheritance which I have caused my people Yisrael to inherit. Behold, I will pluck them out of their land and pluck out the house of Yehudah from among them. And it shall come to pass, after that I have plucked them out, I will return and have compassion on them. And I will bring them again, every man to his heritage, and every man to his land. And it shall come to pass, if they will diligently learn the ways of my people, to swear by my name, Yahuwah liveth, as they taught my people to swear by Baal, then shall they be built in the midst of my people. But if they will not obey, I will utterly pluck up and destroy that nation, saith Yahuwah.
That's right.
So here's the reversal in prophecy. We've been taught Greco-Roman Christianity, Baal, Sunday worship, Easter, Christmas, Valentine's Day. The list goes on and on. They taught us to swear by Baal. The reason that Yah has awakened us in these last days and filled us with his spirit that we can now read this book with understanding, and he's raising up teachers, is so we can turn around and teach them our ways, which come from the Torah. And make no mistake, if you're a Gentile, learning the ways of the people is absolutely life and death for you. We just read it. And you still haven't replaced us. Sorry.
No need to apologize.
No need to apologize. Thank you, Moray. We serve a purpose. Our job is to read this book with understanding and demonstrate the way to the nations. The way is Torah. Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. The light of the world is the word made flesh. He said he will put his laws in your heart, according to Jeremiah 31 through 34. What do you think is happening? Prophecy. And your job is to show the way to the other nations. Last bit of scripture, and I'm done. How do we do this? How do we stick out? How do we show them the way? Other than just preaching. Preaching is good. Hallelujah for preaching. But Moray once shared a valuable lesson to me. Me, Moray, and Brother Kiefer from Sacktown were riding in the car one evening. Shout out to Brother Kiefer from Sacktown if you happen to be listening. Shalom, brother. Kiefer said something very profound. He said, people are very accustomed to the Bible being preached. But what our people need to see right now is the Bible being lived out. And Moray turned around and looked at me and said, Elijah, did you hear that? And I said, yes, Moray. And I thought about it for a long time. We need to walk in these laws, statutes, and commandments so that Yah can bless us for a sign and for a wonder instead of cursing us. Believe it. That's our purpose, to walk in his laws, statutes, and commandments and walk in his blessings too.
Come on.
even in captivity. Daniel walked in the blessings. Has anyone read the book of Daniel lately? He was blessed in his captivity. So don't think that you can't be. That's your purpose. World's full of darkness. You're supposed to draw people with the light that is in you. All right, Galatians chapter 5. And then I will shut it down.
What did she say? Oh, she got jokes.
Okay, so Galatians chapter 5, we're going to draw a line of distinction between the works of the flesh and the fruits of the Spirit. As believers, as the remnant of the kingdom of priests, we need to separate ourselves from the works of the flesh and manifest the fruits of the Spirit. This is how we draw people to us so that we have organic opportunities to witness and share our faith. It's an everyday thing. Galatians chapter 5, picking it up at verse 16. This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. But if ye be led of the Spirit, ye are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, uncontrolled lust, is what that big fancy word means. Idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions. Sedition is basically the rebellion against rightful authority, right? Heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings, partying, right? And such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in times past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of Elohim.
Right.
In times past, he told you something like that in 1 Corinthians 6 and 9. But the fruit of the Spirit, it is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. And they that are Christ's have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let us not be desirous of vain glory, provoking one another or envying one another. And it, of course, goes on. Here's the point. At this stage in the world and in our walk, we are called to rise again as a kingdom of priests. We need to walk in Torah. We need to get away from the things of the flesh. Put all that to death. Whatever is keeping you from manifesting the fruits of the Spirit, address it. Don't ignore it. It's important. We have to walk in the fruits of the Spirit because that will set us apart visibly from the rest of the world.
Correct.
And people will come to you asking questions. Why are you so happy? Why is your wife always grinning when I see her? Why are y'all so happy? What is it? That's what it's about. People will ask you questions. They will want to know, why is your life so good? Because you are manifesting the fruits of the Spirit. When you look at a tree, what are you drawn to? You're drawn to things like flowers. Flowers give rise to fruits if it's a fruit tree. People are looking for those things in you. We are compared to trees all over Scripture, human beings. We're asked to bear fruit. This is the fruit he's talking about, the fruit of the Spirit. This makes your witness powerful. This makes your witness organic. That's what this is about. This is our return to our original purpose. And this is where we should be focused. Because in case you haven't read the book of Revelation, the world is about to get really dark. So right now it's day. We must work while it's still day. The world is going to continue to wax worse and worse. Our job is to be the light. So thank you so much for your time, family. And to everyone watching online, I wish you shalom. And I pray that this word receives you in good health and that it finds root in fertile soil. May Yah bless you. Shalom.
Shalom.